Mr. Casey, let me come to you. You were pointing out that 80% of the benefits come from one side of the equation and 20% come from the other. Can you expand upon that? Explain to us exactly what it takes let's just go to the 80%. What does it take to gain 80% of the benefits? Can you move that microphone over there, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The 80% comes, in this study, it comes from approximately half from system optimization, which is the various functions that make the electricity flow more efficiently across the grid. So that's energy efficiency or grid efficiency. Making sure that the voltage is proper, making sure the current is proper, making sure the balance between the various channels is all appropriate, making sure that when there's a transformer that is degrading, it's recognized and either fixed or electricity is routed around it in the case of an outage and so on. So that's system optimization. That's about half of that 80 to 85%. The other half of the 80 to 85% is that the renewables cannot really reach their full potential without having more intelligence in the grid to allow them to be managed and dispatched, and as we talked about before. So half of it is from the grid wires itself, and half of it is from what a smart grid will do for renewables.
And how much of that, Mr. Casey, do you think is going to be as a result of public monies having to be spent, or just a different regulatory framework in which the marketplace is responding as it did in the telecommunications field after the changes that were made that made it possible for MCI and Sprint, when you and I were working together in the 1970s, to be able now to gain better access to the network. How would you divide that question, and how much money ultimately do you think comes out of the public sector and how much out of the private sector?
I think that the money in the stimulus package will determine the answer to that question. I believe that the approximately $11 billion that's set aside in the stimulus package for smart grid or energy efficiency measures is now sitting at the DOE, and the DOE is going to have to decide how to allocate that. If they allocate it in ways that allow, as Mr. Gilligan said, solutions to be adopted at scale that can actually show the benefits of these various technologies we're talking about, then I think the market itself will take off, and you won't need any more public money. There will have to be, as several people on the panel have mentioned, there has to be regulatory changes. Because as you remember from those days, Mr. Chairman, regulated rate-based monopolists don't have a lot of incentive to be efficient.
I remember that. Yeah.
And in telecom, what happened was technology developed and new entrants came in. And then the new entrants were MCI and Sprint and Daytran and all these people. There is no competing long-distance set of carriers. There is no cable television industry that can offer VoIP channels to consumers to give them a choice. There is no wireless alternative to give them a choice. So the economic structure of the electricity industry, I think, is different. But if the regulatory regime allows them to make money by investing capital in technology that will produce efficiencies, then I think they will do it, and consumers will save money. And the society will be better off because we'll be much greener.
All right, and then expand upon that. Talk a little bit about then the ability, if we get this right, to use renewable energy, electrical generation as part of the electric vehicle revolution.
I think there will be an electric vehicle revolution, in fact, and I think it will happen faster than other people think it will happen. I think solar and wind and distributed generation at homes and in backyards, I think that's going to happen. And all of that needs a couple of things. The economics of the electric industry right now are very, very simple. They invest money, they get a return on it. They make the return by charging a number of kilowatt hours sold times pennies per kilowatt hour. So if we conserve as consumers, or if government wants a conservation policy, what that means to an electric company is they get less revenue. But they don't save a corresponding amount of costs. As an investor-owned utility, they can't possibly do that. It's not right. So the energy the way they make money has to be altered, and that's complicated because their regulation is basically on the state level, which was another problem in telecom, and it was resolved in that sector.
My time has expired. I'll just make this point that in the 1970s, there was just this confluence where I was a graduate of Boston College, Mr. Casey was a graduate of Boston College, 3 of the FCC commissioners were graduates of Boston College, and we all agreed.
It was a conspiracy.
And there was no course, and by the way, there was no course at Boston College on this subject, but we all agreed that it wasn't a good idea for our mothers to have to rent a phone for $3 a month and to have everyone, every time there's a long distance call, to yell, "Grandma's on the phone, long distance, run to the phone." Why is that the case? Because one company, one utility had 1.2 million employees, AT&T, and these little companies, MCI and Sprint, wanted to get into the business. So we changed the rules.
And that was,
when we changed the rules, we changed the dynamic for the deployment of this telecommunications network. Mr. Casey.
And we were all very concerned that our mothers would know that we were allowing that to continue too. So
It's exactly right. It was all driven by the same kind of guilt that Mr. Zimmerman is now inducing in people as well at Walmart, okay? And that's always the most powerful admonition that grips your brain. Let me turn